How you doing there, Brayden? Are you on? Am I on with you?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay, perfect.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. Busy. Busy as a one-armed paper hanger, like they say, if you know what that means. People used to put wallpaper on their walls, I guess. Now they just paint, right? But the old days used to be wallpaper, so you'd try to put
Uh-huh.
glue on, and then you try to put paper on, and it's like there's all these different things you have to do with both arms. So that's the
Yeah.
joke is a one-arm paper hanger trying to do all of it. Yeah. How about you guys? How are your workouts going?
Mm, Up and down.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of everything. Just
Right.
I don't know. They go good, then it's bad, and it's good, and it's bad.
Yeah.
But I think we're slowly getting back to where I kind of want to be.
Awesome. Well, here, let me do my intro and I can always piece this together later, but um, good evening and welcome to another episode of Raise the Bar. I'm your host, Troy Haines of Sky High and Fly Jump Camps fame, quote unquote fame on Instagram. And I'm here tonight with Brayden Sorensen. He is a young man who I, of course, came across his stuff on Instagram, which is where I tend to live. It's a running joke here on the show. But I did my research off of his link tree and all that and found out that you are how many time All-American?
Four.
Four-time All-American. And this is at the D2 level.
Yep.
At the
Yep.
D2 level, you're in the MIAA, which is I wrote it down and now I'm messing it up under pressure. Which conference? Mid
Mid,
American.
or it's like Mid International Athletic Association
Okay,
or
now
mid.
it's complicated if you don't even know what it is. Where
Let
is
me,
it?
let me
It's
look it up real
the,
quick.
it's the Mid-America Intercollegiate Athletics Association. So
Yep.
you're a three-time champ, right? So
hmm
and you have another chance. You're going to be a four-timer there. You got a chance,
4 or 5, hopefully.
right?
Got
Okay. So
indoor and outdoor.
is that indoor and out then?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Good. And see, you're talking to a California boy. We don't have any out indoor.
I
Uh,
know. I've always wondered how that all worked.
yeah, well, there's just no need for it really. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then I saw also the UNK indoor and outdoor record holder. So you go to Nebraska-Kearney, right?
Yep.
And that's the name of the school. So give us a little background, Brayden. Where did you do your high school jumping? How high were you jumping and all that stuff? Were you a hot commodity? Was everybody trying to get you on their team? How'd it go?
I was more of one of the guys that I've heard you say it before on your podcast before, just one of the guys that gets to college and just comes out of nowhere. I
Hmm.
was just really underdeveloped in high school. Coaching was pretty good, just was underdeveloped, didn't have much strength, wasn't very explosive. I
Right.
jumped 6'4" in high school.
Right.
So for our actual like the in season for the school, I jumped 6'4" and then I jumped 6'5" at an out of season sort of summer meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I jumped those when I was a junior, and then when I was a senior, I broke my foot
Oh,
dunking, playing basketball.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
most, if a high jumper gets injured, it's probably playing basketball.
Right.
But
Yep.
yeah, and then I jumped on it for the whole my whole senior season, and it just got worse
Yeah.
because it was stress fractures up my third and fourth metatarsal,
Oh,
and I
was
just
it your
kept jumping
takeoff
on
foot
it
or
and
your
jumping on it.
takeoff
What
foot
was
or
that?
push off foot? Was it your takeoff foot or your push off foot?
It was my takeoff foot.
Yeah. That's
So actually in
cool.
high school, I jumped off the right side. I went to college and I went to the left.
Really?
Yeah. So I jumped 6'5" or 6'4" off the right side in high school. And then I got to college and my foot was still all messed up. And I'm like, I just looked at my coach one day and I was a freshman coming in. I was, I was a scholared athlete, but I wasn't anything crazy. It was kind of just the bare minimum.
Right.
Two of my teammates were a lot better than me, or the recruits coming in were a lot better than me. But I just looked at my coach one day and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to jump even off this foot. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I know I can jump off my other foot because I've always been ambidextrous.
Yeah.
So let's just give it a shot. And then 3 months later, my PR was 6'8", and I'm like, I'm happy with this.
Right. That's pretty awesome. I got a lot of stories about using both legs for various reasons, and some things that are maybe unqualified or unverified as far as theories as to why these things can work or won't work. But yeah, there's a famous example of someone who did what you did, who the name was Gail Olson. And I have heard this story. I have no verification, but I've had it repeated to me by jumpers that were older and had jumped high against him. He was a 7'4" high jumper, and he was a zero approach guy. So he was literally right at the standard. So he would run downhill, super tight turn, right? And then boom. So he's putting his foot was really out in front. And I think it was parallel. The stories that I heard was like parallel foot plant, but you're coming downhill almost like you're a hurdler. So it just put a lot of stress on the ankle and the knee, right?
I was gonna say, if you put your foot in the wrong spot doing that on takeoff, your knee just
exactly. So he did. He put his knee in the wrong spot and basically blew out his ACL. And this is back in the days now, in the early 70s, when I started jumping 76 when I was 12. So I think I heard the story, at UCLA would have been early 80s at the, latest. And then I'm sure he had been around for a while. So I remember finding the names in different places. So long story short, he didn't recover from that on that leg. So he switched legs, and apparently didn't learn anything because he went to a zero approach on the other side. So he jumped 7'4" off the left and then blew it out, and switched to the other leg and jumped 7'4" off his other leg and then blew out that ACL. And that was the end of his career. Because, now they can do the whole cadaver replacements, and they got pretty good at the, fixing the ACL. What was it? Who was the running back in the NFL? Adrian Peterson, right? Had an ACL tear and came back the very next year and led the league in rushing, and ran for like 2,000 yards. And then a good friend of mine and former Olympian, Doug Nordquist, jumped into 84 games, jumped 7'7" at the trials, came in second to his cousin, Dwight Stones, and then he jumped 7'6" at the Olympics, came in fifth. And then a few years later, in the 88 run, I believe it was 88, might have been even as late as 92, but I can't remember if Doug was still jumping then. He might have been. He blew out his ACL playing basketball, and they just did a complete cadaver replacement. They didn't fix his, they just took it out and got a cadaver ACL and put it in and stapled it and roughed it up and did all the things that they know how to do. And he came back and jumped 7'8" 3/4" on that, 236. So
that's crazy.
But that wasn't his mistake on that. It was just basketball. You were saying everybody gets hurt playing basketball. So we covered two stories at once. I have rolled my ankles playing basketball, which they told us not to do when you're on scholarship. But we'd go play, intramural games or whatever. And there's always some big old goofy galoot, 6'6" guy with big old giant feet that you land on when you jump up.
You land on them.
And
I was gonna say, I had one of our high jumpers from last year. He doesn't high jump anymore, but literally, I think it was a week ago, he landed on someone's ankle and now he's on crutches.
Yeah.
He's playing basketball.
It's a nightmare. I'm amazed it doesn't happen more often. You watch in the NBA, you watch in college.
Oh, yeah.
So much basketball here. And it's a real ballet when it comes to where you're putting your feet. And, in the NBA, there were those guys that used to stick their feet out when guys would jump up and shoot their jump shots. Just leave their foot out for you to land on to try to get you to roll your hand. I mean, some guys are really bad about that, but I think they've outlawed it, or, at least if they can prove that somebody was really trying to do it, I think they can give them a flagrant or something like that. But anyway, all right. So the amazing, you switch sides. So yeah, my other thing I was going to say about that is that the whole ambidextrous thing, I'm really, really interested in that, because the brain, the way that it's structured, is left and right sided, right? So left side, and they already know that, I forget which one it is. There's an artist side, right? Artist, which is spatial, temporal, and, a lot of different things going on there. People that tend to be left-handed, and, I'm not even sure which side is which. And then there's a right brain, which is analytical and spatial and, computational, right? And so you have all those things. So, and we're hardwired one way or the other for the most part. But I remember when we were kids, there were guys that hit left-handed. And of course, what would you do when you're playing softball? You pick up the bat, you're playing baseball, and you go, I want to try that, right?
Yep.
And I could never hit left-handed. I would top it, I would swing and miss, and I could hit right-handed fine. And it was really weird, but it was like, okay, baseball's really not my sport. I liked it. I played it a little bit, and I did football and track. And then Elias, my little Romanian coach at Long Beach City, there was one day when I was just terrible, off my right side, off my left leg from the right side. And he was like, your leg is dead. You go jump other side. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Elias? I'm like, I mean, in my mind, no hops off my right leg, none. And he's like, go. So I'm like, okay. So I started doing it, and 5 feet, 5'3", maybe, 5'2" in workouts. And I'm just like, and I was not a patient person when I was doing jump stuff, because I was always like, I was hungry. I wanted to learn. And I'd be like, well, what are we doing? Yeah. We're wasting our time, just super impatient. I'm 20 years old. So he's like, and so eventually, we went along, and I think I jumped 5'3" in practice. And then we went to a meet, one of those all-comers meets. And I want to say this was my second stint with Elias. So he'd already got me to 222. I jumped 7'3.5" with him coaching me. And then I was taking a shot at the trials in 88. That was what it was. And I'm jumping off the other leg, and I just didn't get it. And then we went to a meet, and it was an all-comers meet. And there's literally little grandmas with their walkers, and there's like young 5-year-old kids. And, it's like everybody. All-comers means all-comers. I'm sitting there with my UCLA stuff that I still had, and I'm just bored because I'm waiting for the bar to go up. And it started at 3 feet, and it was going up in 3-inch increments. And it's just like, like for an hour, right? And I'm like, so I go, you know what? I'm going to start jumping off my other leg. I'll jump off my weak leg until I miss, and then I'll come into the right side. So I opened at 5 feet. I went 5 feet, 5'3", 5'6", 5'9", 6 feet. And I'm like going, and for some reason I was juiced, and my right leg was always rested compared to my left, because you just pound your row leg into the ground. This other one was fine. So it was kind of going, I'm starting to get the feel of it. I'm running a better curve. I'm starting to figure out how to take off and lay out. And it was like, I went 6 feet, 6'3", and 6'6" off my weak leg. And then when I missed the first time at 6'9", I flipped over my other leg and went 6'9", 7, and almost made 7'3". So I was like, huh, that was kind of cool. It was like, and my brain was like, I don't know what happened, but I do remember going to the batting cages a couple weeks later. And that same thing, it was all of a sudden I was like, this feels different than when it did when I was in high school. And I got in on the 80 machine and just started hitting tape measure home runs from the left side. And, I'm left-handed. Yep. Like going, well, that's weird. But it seems like I see the ball better from this side. And I had that left-hander upward stroke, it was like, boom. I'm like, man, I think I'm just killing the ball over here. But I found it interesting in that I think there's like maybe some rewiring. And then when it comes to learning skills, like basic stuff, like drive your knee up or drive your knee up and across or whatever it is, maybe learning it from the other side of the body either enhances it, or you learn it in a different way because of the other side of the brain and all that. You know what I mean? So I became convinced that it's not a bad idea. There have been days when my kids are dead, they're overtrained or they're jumping too much and they can't get off the ground and they're getting frustrated, right? You were mentioning it yourself. You have days that just aren't that great. And I was like, hey, all right, switch to the other side, and I get the same reaction they gave me. What are you talking about, coach? I can't jump off this leg. I'm just like, yeah. I've heard it. Start the bar low, and it's like, you're still teaching the same concepts. And surprisingly, after a while, they start to figure some stuff out. They start to go, yeah, I feel like I've got some pop off this leg, because it doesn't get beat up. So yeah, that's my stories there. I find it interesting. I would love to know the cheat codes behind the engineering and the human body and the mind and all the relays and, how it all works, and find out why that is a beneficial exercise, or if everybody's going to have the same reaction to, what we call ambidextrous training. I don't know.
I did it last year too. I got back, I was jumping like pretty solid, like consistently around 7 indoor last year.
Right.
And then I went to our indoor national meet that was at Virginia Beach at their new big like complex or whatever they
Nice.
got. And I only jumped like 204. Just a
Mhm.
big, I was just struggling mentally, I guess, just in the approach and everything, just not really being confident almost.
Mhm.
But we get back from nationals and I was just playing basketball, like not like playing basketball, but kind of jumping around a little bit. And I just ran up there and I'm like, I'm just gonna try to jump back off my left foot and see if it works, like if it doesn't hurt anymore. And next thing I know, like my head's like at the rim and I'm like,
Right.
let's just see maybe if I could try to high jump on that side for a week and see what it does. And then I go and high jump off that side for a week and I'm making bungees at like 7 foot, like easier than the left side. And I'm just like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
But it's all just because I mean, like mentally, I just didn't care as much on what was going
Sure.
to happen. It's just run up there and jump.
Right. Right. There's a freedom in that. That's
Mhm.
the beauty of, what, was there's a guy that used to call the Monday Night Football games, Danny Don Meredith, and it was a Cowboy Redskin game, and they said this guy came in, his name was Clint Longley, and Roger Staubach was hurt, and he played, and he killed the Redskins, and they said it was the victory of the untrammeled mind because apparently he didn't even know the playbook. He was just, he was just
Yep.
dropping back and chucking it, and hitting people in full stride. Like, oh my gosh, this is great. So yeah, the unfettered, just be athletic and go. It's interesting because I do this. I'm sure you've had this experience, but like the first time somebody comes over and they say, "Let me try the high jump," right? And you guys are working out, and it could be a distance runner or somebody, and the bar's low, and you're like, "Yeah, go ahead." And you watch people come over, and depending on their skill level, some people can look really pretty good. They're even if they're stuttering their feet or whatever, and all you're saying, and they're like, "How do you do this?" And you're like, "Well, just kind of run and curve and jump and, see what happens." And some people, start doing pretty well with it right away, and it's like, and they're not really being over technical or over analytical because you're not giving them a whole lot to go on. They're just being athletic. So there's a there's a beauty in that sometimes, and the fresh leg thing, because if they've never done it before, unless they
Yep.
came over after a really challenging sprint workout or heavy lifting the day before or something like that. But okay, so in high school, you were 6'4", 6'5". You said
Mhm.
you messed up your senior year. You broke something,
Yep.
right? And so you ended up getting your scholarship to Nebraska-Kearney. And
Mhm.
at that point, I remember when I came in at UCLA, I was number 7 on the depth chart at 210. I jumped 210 in high school.
I
So
would
when
have
you get there,
been
they had 7 guys that could jump better than that. Yeah, it's crazy. I had Dell Davis,
7 over 210 is pretty
right?
up there. I think I would have been either sixth, I think sixth or seventh
Yeah,
coming in.
right.
And then
That's nice to
within,
even have that many. I mean, I can't get a jump crew like that now. I'm at Vanguard University out here, and I've got one guy, and he's hurt. And then I work with the multis, so having 7 guys would be like unbelievable. 7 guys to train.
either it was either seven or six, but we've had God guys for a while. Like we've had a good solid group of guys, and then just this year, now we're down to three.
Yeah,
But we have like 8 girls, so
yeah. It goes in
just back and
cycles,
forth.
right? It just goes
Yep.
in cycles. So
Yep.
let's chronicle now when you get there and you started increasing, you switched sides due to the injury, and you're
Mhm.
jumping off from the right side or left side, right leg, and your PR has now gone up. And is that the side you stayed on, or was that just a training for a while? Did you go back to the left or you stay on the right?
No,
Back to the left leg from the right, or go back to the right leg from the left?
I jump off the left side
Left side
still.
now. Okay.
But last year when I said I took that like a week and I jumped off the right side,
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just put me in a meet and see how it goes because it was the opener to the outdoor season. And I'm like, I got all year to qualify, all year to
Right.
jump. Let's just mentally take another week off from the left and try the right. And I took attempts at like it was either 213 or 212. Just first meet ever, even trying it off the right side. And I'm like, I could maybe jump 7 foot on both sides.
Yeah.
Or I know I can't.
Sounds like it.
I don't know
Yeah.
if I want to get intent, but
Right.
no, we've been then just after that. I did it 1 week, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go back.
Yeah.
I've stuck there since.
So this is something that just keeps coming up because I've been doing podcasts with a lot of jumpers just like yourself. Seems like we've got a lot in the US of 7'2", 7'2.5", 7'3", like a lot of jumpers in that range. Now, in the old days, it used to be the trial height was just really, really up there, and it still is. The A standard is higher than ever, I think. I think it's 227, I want to say now.
For the
225
trials,
is 4.5. Yeah. Do you know what the trial heights
I,
are for A and B?
I think the A is 26.
Still 26. So that was what it was back in 1988 and 92
Mhm.
when I was trying. So in 1984, it was 224. It was only 4.25. And then
Mhm.
it went up to 225 and then 226 while I was still chasing that dream and I wasn't getting any better. So I jumped to 222 my senior year. And then of course it just, like I said, kept going up. That the first year I jumped 218, it was at 224, which is, and I took a couple jumps at that, but I wasn't really, that wasn't on my mindset then. And it wouldn't have mattered. It would have been fun to go, but it was
Yeah.
at the start of that year, I'd only jumped 6'10" still. I PR'd twice that year. And, all of a sudden somebody said, hey, you jumped 7'2", the try height's only 7'4.25". It's like, oh, okay. So I went to a couple more meets because it was right at the end of the season, like in May or June. And it didn't pan out. And, I was 20 years old and I just went on the way. And, 4 years later, it's like, oh yeah. And then it was already up higher. Right. So, but it keeps climbing up there. And then what's the B standards? I know the A standard is 226. Is the B standard still 220?
I don't think they have a B
No
anymore.
B anymore
It's
for a
just
while.
it's just basically you put your name in and they just either they fill the field or they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think
So
for a while there, they were doing the numbers. I know it's, the whole 16, top 16 now, right? There's no
I think
official
for
qualifying height, but it used to have the
might be
NC2A regionals, all that, right?
mhm.
It's all different. Like when I was jumping, we didn't have regionals. You
Yep.
had to jump 7'3.5" to get to NC2A finals. That was it. There was no
There's
region.
just an A standard.
Yeah, no 6'11", no nothing. It was 7'3.5" or nothing. So I had to PR my senior year just to go to my first and only nationals. And that was it, and then later on there was A and B. And I know back in at least 2016, because I did a podcast with a guy a while back who started at junior college, Robert Atwater, and he jumped 7'2.5", which was the
Yep.
B standard, and he got to go to the
We can
trials.
we compete
So
against him.
yeah,
He goes
yeah,
to he goes to Midland.
yeah. He's still around. Right.
I'm really close with Shandon and Ross and then he's on the team now.
Right. Shannon and those guys are NAIA though, right?
Yep.
Shannon,
Yep.
because I went to the NAIA Nationals 2 years ago and I met Shannon after doing a podcast with him. Nice kid. And Michael Milslegel. Have you met
Yep. Miss
Michael?
Legel.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys got so many great jumpers in the middle of the country. It's amazing. And I always forget, it's a huge country. There's
Yep.
50 states. There's lots of colleges, lots of kids that played basketball and volleyball that can jump out of the building. So it's not surprising in its own way, but there are a lot of you. So I got to get you guys to come out here and train with me, man. I want to teach talented jumpers the stuff that I think works and I know works really well. It's like, all right, where's all these 7'2", 7'3" guys? Get them out here in California. And then you can find out right away why we don't have indoors, because it just doesn't rain in Southern California. They even wrote a song about it.
I've never been to California.
We've had a rainy week this last week, so it does every once in a while, but for the most part, it's nice. So it's like, yeah, it might as well be Florida. It's a little drier than Florida, but it's usually clear and sunny. If it's, every once in a while it gets cold. We're in the middle of winter now, but like today it was 68 degrees and sunshine. So you're like, and
I think
there's
it
no
was
snow on the ground. There's no frost to melt. There's nothing. It's just train outdoors.
it's 37 degrees here right now.
Oh yeah. I
But
don't do well
and
with cold, man.
it's warm. It is very nice outside today.
Yeah.
I think 2 or might have been like 3 weeks ago or so. or maybe a little earlier in December, but it was like feels like -37 for like a week straight.
Yeah.
Like you go outside for 2 minutes and your like face is frozen. If your
Right.
mustache, like my mustache will be just frozen solid.
I had a friend of mine, Anthony Gaines, if you're out there listening, he's a former football player, coach, friend of mine. We coached at a school called two schools out here called Norta Vista and La Sierra High School. And I'm Troy Anthony Haines and he's Anthony Gaines. So we always said we're brothers from another mother. And he told me that when he was in the service for a while and they were in cold places like you're talking about, that his sergeant told him, do not, no matter whatever you do, don't lick your lips when you're outside when it's that cold. And, they're kids. And he's like, why? Just don't do it. And he said he licked his lips and it froze and he started getting, the lips bleeding and, and it just gets worse after that because you almost can't stop yourself. And he's just like, oh my God, yeah. If you ever get in that situation, don't. I was like, okay. Yeah, that kind of cold, I don't do that well with. I'm like, I don't. Phew. We went to where's the coldest place I went to? We got tortured twice when I was at UCLA. So we're Southern California boys, right? Now I was born in San Francisco, but I'd only lived there till I was 7. So, and I was happy to get out of San Francisco because it was always raining. So
Mm.
that's Northern California, which is usually wet. So we came down here and it was like getting let out of prison as a kid. I was so happy. It was like go outside every day, go to the park and play, right? Go play basketball, baseball, whatever was in season. We played everything. It was awesome. So I grew up in that. And then, off to UCLA with you. And then my freshman year, we got to go up against Oregon. And Oregon takes us up there. It's March. And we got there the first day and it was kind of cloudy, kind of gray, but wasn't raining or anything like that. And it was like, we went and saw some cool places. If you're ever there, go to Tracktown Pizza. Tracktown Pizza was a blast. Got to see all these old pictures on the wall of great jumpers and black and white, right? And
Yeah, I
then,
have a cup from there.
uh-huh,
From
great
you when I
place.
went to USA's last year. I went to Tracktown because the first year that I went to USA's, we were gonna go there, and we just ended up not doing it because
Right.
my coach has been there a bunch of times, and I'm like, I gotta go. And
Yeah.
then last year we ended up going, and I jumped really, or I not amazing, but I made 16 and I got 7th. So I was like, I need to get something from somewhere in this
Right.
area to just remember it.
Sure. Yeah. 216. So, that's 7-1, right? 216.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I'm still all these years later, my metric is terrible. Yeah, we made a joke at that on here. So yeah, Tracktown was awesome, right? So we did that. Did you order the mile pizza? Do they still do the mile? The mile pizza was one that they were pushing on us. They said it's got whole wheat crust. Do they still have the whole wheat crust?
Not, I
I'm
don't,
just curious. This
I
is
couldn't
like 40
remember.
years, right? I'm just curious. I need to go back, but yeah, it was really good. It was light. It was almost like having like wheat thins as your crust, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense. And it was crunchy and flaky. It was really, really good. And oh my gosh, I could have lived at that place. It was awesome. So, and when we were there, they had the old stadium, which was all wood bleachers. Have you ever seen the
Mhm.
movie Animal
Yep.
House? If you've seen the movie Animal House, in the background when they're doing their things, they're torturing one of the cadets, and he's a pledging a fraternity and he's always in trouble. But they in the background you'll see that stadium. So when we were up there might have been a part of my brain that recognized it because I'd seen Animal House by then. But it was like, when you get there, that old stadium was loud because those people would stomp their feet in those wooden bleachers and they were really loud. And
Wood.
so we got out there and this is my freshman year, right? And Dell Davis and Lee were still on the team with me, 7'7" guy, 7'6" guy, right? And then me. I don't know how I made that trip. I went from 7 to 3. I really don't remember how. And I wasn't jumping well, but it was what it was. And it was cold. When we got up that next morning, it was cold. It was like in the 40s and it was dropping. It was, and we're getting out there to warm up, and they had told me to bring tights, which I did not own. I had to go buy a pair of tights. I think they gave me some school issue ones. Um, And then I had 2 layers of sweats on, we're warming up, and I just did not like cold. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm running and trying to get loose, and it's just freezing and warming up. And then they say, okay, we're going to introduce you. So they put you in that little shed out in the middle. I don't know, because they've always had the Olympic trials there. And now
Yep.
they've redone the whole field. So this was the old field, but they had this little room, and they had that huge scoreboard. And so they put up your names and everything. Okay, here's the 3 guys from UCLA. It's big dual meet. They had doped the meet out, right, and put it in the paper. So we're sitting at the I don't know, the hotel or somewhere reading the morning paper, and the local paper had the meet doped out. And of course, they made us win by like 1 or 2. And they're like, hey, we need everybody to come out and support the Ducks, right? And that place was packed with crazy people. It's 40 degrees, and they're all just stomping and yelling and everything else. And we're just like going, it was an awesome environment, but it's kind of intimidating, which is, of course, the way you want it. And we're sitting there, and they go, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do the high jump now. And they tell, here's Del Davis, came in second at NC2As last year, on and on. There's, very polite, great crowd. They know their track and field like nobody's business. And they go, and not for the first time in my career, they go, and Troy Haines, crickets. So nobody knew who I was. I'm a freshman. Nobody still knows who I am. Nobody cares. So we did that, and you're looking up on the scoreboard, and you see their names come out, and all of a sudden it gets quiet, and you hear everybody just, and the guy looks up and he goes, ladies and gentlemen, is that snow? And no BS. Here comes these flakes. And I'm from Southern California, and I'm like, it is snowing at my track meet against Oregon. And the guy goes, first call for the men's giant slalom. And the place cracks up, and I'm just like, it's snowing in my meet. So I don't think I no-heighted, but I didn't jump very high. I think I jumped like 2 meters or something. And none of us jumped well. Dell and Lee didn't jump either. I think they might have jumped 6'10". It was just not our weather. And they just had their way with us. It was bad. And I think, if I remember correctly, the great Jim Bush, who was still the track and field coach, legendary coach, was on a 2-year dual meet winning streak when we were on that. And we got our butts kicked. And he was pissed at us. We were getting on the bus the next day, and he goes, Troy, I noticed you were wearing your sweats. Why didn't you take them off when you were jumping? You should have been, just wearing your tights. And I was like, I'm so sorry, coach. Like, I thought I lost the meet for him, and I was like, but it was cold, man. I didn't want to get down to my tights. Are you kidding me? I knew I shouldn't be jumping in my sweats, but man, it was cold. So anyway, how did we get on that tangent? I have this famous skill of wandering off. Oh, we were talking, how did we get to Oregon?
I don't know, but I got a story to back that.
Let's go.
Come back with that. So I'm a freshman, and our outdoor national meet was in Allendale at Grand Valley.
Okay.
So it's in Allendale, Michigan. And it was supposed to be like, I wouldn't say warm, but probably like 50s, mid 50s to 60s, like every day. And then there's the day I compete, and it was high 30s, low 40s with like a 30-mile-an-hour north wind off Lake Michigan. Just very cold. Like
wind
2 or 3 there was like 2 of the coaches on my team that didn't even leave the hotel to come watch me. They just watched it in the hotel because they didn't even want to come out there. And then, so I'm from Nebraska. Like, I'm from Kearney too as well. So I'm there, and I'm like, I mean, it's not, I hunt all the time too. So I'm used to being in the cold a lot.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, this is just a good way for me to get warm, because if it's cold and I'm warm, then I know I'm warm. I'm ready to go. And I think 3 or 4 of the top jumpers in that field that year were from Florida or Texas or California, and they get up there, and it just looked like they lost, like, I don't know, they just didn't look as good. They were cold, just like freezing, not jumping as good. And I'm sitting there like, I can jump in this all the time.
Right.
I got a couple friends that were in that field from like Colorado and just northern states, and we all jumped really well. And I ended up jumping, I think I jumped 17 for the first time, and I'm like, it was just like unfair almost.
Right, right. The
I was
home
like,
field advantage for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. There's all kinds of stories like that, in bigger meet history too. Like Dwight Stone's the Olympics 76 in Montreal. They had that huge stadium and they had the option to either open or close the thing on top.
Hmm.
And they left it open and it rained. And so the surface was wet. And Dwight jumped 7-3 and came in third and just raised a stink about the fact that they left the roof open and it was wet. And Greg Joy from Canada won the gold. And of course, all the Canadian, the Montreal Canadiens were like, that's too bad. Our guy won, your guy didn't. And that's the whole thing. Dwight came back with a shirt that said, I love French Canadians, the next time they saw him or whatever. I think he'd complained. I don't remember if they complained in the prelim, if they had, I think they have a qualifying and then a final, right? 2 days. So however it worked, it didn't go well. But then, a week after the Olympics, he broke the world record again. So it was like he kind of reestablished and said, yeah, I only got the bronze, but took the world record back. But yeah, that's one of those famous stories. I've talked with Doug Nordquist about that. The cold is one thing, but slick is another. If you're a speed guy and you're
And
really
it was wet. It was
yeah,
rainy too.
yeah, that really messes with people. Like I didn't trust that either. When I was at UCLA, my first year was 83. So we had a grass approach. That's how old it was. I mean, most high schools now have an apron that's, the, the oval end of the
Yep.
track somewhere where you can get at least 10 or 12 steps in an approach if you want. And, I'll put the pits the long way now. Like when we had that, finally got that at UCLA, I said, if I'm running out of room this way, I'll go across this way and make it even longer.
Mhm.
But, the it was grass and then like maybe 2 or 3 steps on the tartan.
Yep.
And I had this pair of shoes, these old Adidas shoes is what they gave me at the school. And they had these kind of vinyl bottoms. They weren't rubber and they weren't that really sharp, spiky rubber they have now, but it was like it would get wet and it would get slick. And running off the grass and you start to torque into your curve, you could slip on that if they just watered the grass a little too much. And I remember slipping a couple times and that as soon as I slipped once, I was a goner because then you're afraid to
Just
push.
mental.
Yeah, you're afraid to really accelerate and lean, into your curve or whatever. And that's trouble. So yeah, those are huge problems. Let's track you then. You started off jumping 6'4", 6'5" in high school. You get to Kearney, you keep getting better. You're switching back and forth due to injuries and whatnot, but how did you get up over that and winning these? I want to hear anytime that somebody wins their conference all these times and is an All-American all these times. Tell us about that.
The first time that I won it was at it was in it was in Topeka, Kansas at Washburn University. They
Okay.
have a new they just had got a new banked track, really new, nice facility. And I think I think I had finally just qualified for nationals the week before. It was
Mhm.
my first time qualifying in our qualifying then, or it's about the same now, but then it was just 6'11", so 211. And I jumped that for the first time. So I was all happy, just confident and ready to go into conference. And we had a good field, but I ended up PRing twice and I PR'd at 12 and then I PR'd at 15.
Nice.
And then my coach was like, okay, you already won. You already did whatever. Let's look at a bar, like a high one. And he puts it up to like 221, makes me take a jump at it. Then throws it to like 224, makes me take a
Mhm.
jump at it, just so I could like see what a real pretty
Yeah.
high bar is. But no, that was the first time winning. And then outdoors, the field, I don't think the field was as good. I think there was a lot of injuries going on with people.
Mm.
But I think I only jumped like 209.
Yeah.
I was just clean through 209, won it, and just put it up to something higher than like I either
Right.
put it to 16 or 17 or something. But no, that was the second time. So that was me winning it indoor and outdoor. And then the following year, I won indoor again, but it was only with 211, I think. I think two of us made 211, and then we both all missed at 14.
Mm-hmm.
But the funny thing that was about both those indoor meets was I got food poisoning the day before the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole night I was throwing up like
Ugh.
everything possible out of my body. I come back to the track the next day and I don't even know yet if I'm even going to compete. It was just kind of go there. This is before or no, this is after COVID because I had the food poisoning,
Right.
no energy, just felt nothing in my body. Didn't eat that whole night. And then I get to the track the next day and I don't know what it was, but it was like it was almost like mentally I put no pressure on myself, didn't worry about anything, and I was just like, I'm gonna just go do what I can do and see
Yeah.
what happens. And then that was the first time I won conference. I broke the facility record. I jumped 7 foot for the first time, PR'd twice, and I
Yeah.
think it was just the mental of I didn't I wasn't worried about the outcome.
Right. Right.
And then we went to the next year's indoor conference meet, and the same thing happens. 2 days
Wow.
before that meet, I get sick, throwing up, come back to the meet the next day or 2 days later. And once again, it was almost like I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't worry about the outcome. And I just went out there and I ended up on the top. And that's about how it went.
Wow. That's, I don't know. I can't remember that ever happening to me, the sick part before big events.
I
But
would say it could be the the first time it was food poisoning. And it might have just been a little bit of, I might be just, my coach always tells me that before a big meet, I just, for some reason, because of nerves or something, I just get sick. Like I
yeah,
almost make myself sick,
yeah,
but I've always jumped good because of it. So I never complained
yeah.
about it.
That's crazy. Now this is an interesting thought that came to me, and I seem to remember one guy. My senior year, I jumped 222 and made it to nationals, and I remember one guy that was there when we were competing. This is D1, but I think he was a D2 or D3 athlete, but he jumped high enough. He jumped like 4.25. So he was able to compete at the D1 finals. Now, my question is, does that work for you guys? Like, I'm assuming if you say you go to nationals this year and you jump 7.6 or something, why
Mhm.
would they not let you compete with the D1 boys for that title? You know what I'm saying? Is there any kind
I
of
don't
rules
know.
like that where that would,
I've
so curious.
I've never seen anything or heard of anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. Also, like D2 right now is just if you pulled up like TFers and look at the D2 list and look at the D1 list, like the depth, big difference. The top end, not much
Yeah,
different.
not much difference. Yeah,
Because I think right now I'm sixth in D2, but I'd only be like 10th or 11th in D1.
right. Yeah,
Like the difference isn't much. So like our national meets are pretty similar, other
yeah,
than maybe a couple two big hitters at the top.
yeah.
But we're all around the same area, which is
Right.
really weird. I mean, if you go back 5 or 6 years ago, it was nothing like that.
Yeah. Well, you
It's
either get a
just
lot of talent coming in or you got some good coaching going on, right? Where all these guys are starting to find something. You were
we just
talking.
got a lot of foreign guys coming in,
Mhm.
all the NIL stuff and
Yeah, yeah, it's a
ability
changing
and
scene for sure. I'm
it's changing for
curious
sure.
curious to see how it's all going to play out because the way football is going with these mega conferences. You're going to have the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC. The Pac-12 is gone at the end of this
Yeah.
basketball season, so it's going to be like the other conferences are just going to get bigger. So they've got these big superpower conferences, and the NIL money is crazy. They're going to have to find some way to regulate that because of course, the rich schools are just going to get richer because they're the ones that can afford to pay more. So
Mhm.
the kids that are good enough to get those deals are going to go to the bigger schools, and it's just going to perpetuate, right? But I see an interesting trickle down effect into track and field and some of the other sports if you can generate interest. this is our year, right? For track and field. It's once every 4 years. We've got the public's attention, and they can go, hey, what about the Olympic trials? And what about, how are we going to do in the Olympics? And for 2 weeks of track and field, everybody's watching like every night, and you've got, of course, everything's still signature events, the 100, 4x1, they don't really, I just had, if you haven't heard it yet, I'm pleased to hear that you've heard the podcast before. We had Jeremy Fisher on just this last week. I still have to produce it and put it out. But he and I talked at length about the fact that the jumps are just so poorly represented here in the U.S. Unless you're in the top, you're going to win big meets or break a record of some kind, you're not getting paid diddly, because it's not a signature. They pay the distances, he said, and they pay the 100. And then, for the rest of it, unless you're dominant, I'd be interested to find out as a fly on the wall what Javon Harrison gets paid, now that he's out of LSU, but he made it to the Olympic finals in the high and the long, so you would think if there's somebody who's going to be getting paid any kind of NIL deal or have some sponsorship money or something, a young man like himself who's coming around to his second Olympics. And the beauty of the last one is it was only 3 years ago, right? So we had that extra year. And but anyway, yeah, it's an ongoing problem that we've talked about here before ad nauseum. So we don't want to dredge it up too much, but I'm always interested to hear, ways to make that all more exciting, because not more exciting, better represented. Because, track and field is just a 3-ring circus of activities. There's so many things going on. And I keep thinking we just need someone who A, loves the sport, B, has the money, and C, has the knowledge to package it, both in how you advertise it, how you do it, but more so just doing a good job of it. Instead of showing every lap of the 5,000 or the 10,000 or the steeplechase, like cut in every once in a while in the middle of the fact that they're just running around in circles. And no offense, but it's not the most gripping race until the end. You're going to run however many laps and nobody's really paying attention until you hear that ding, 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 bell lap. Oh, okay, let's see what the hell's going on, because they've been trading leads back and forth and jockeying for position. But it's like, why don't we mix in a pole vault there, Bob, or go over to the high jump pit and see this great, riveting competition between Shannon and, my boy Brayden or whoever is jumping. That's, these young talents that are jumping 7.2 could jump 7.4 at any minute. I just find it, there's all kinds of opportunities for that, but, nobody's filming it and nobody's paying attention. You got to have somebody with some passion for it, I guess. And, and then a camera angle that makes sense. God, I'm so tired of watching these terrible angles. I'm like, I can't tell what they're doing. Yeah, you've got them in a close-up shot and I can see their upper body going like this. Like, this is a high jump. What's he doing with his legs? What's he doing with his arms? You get a great shot of his face. I'm just like,
or it's just like overly zoomed in on them.
Yeah.
You can see like this much.
Right.
I see those all. It's almost like it's just that angle of capturing like pole vault and long jump, triple, like all the jumps. And it's like, I've never understood why people like why that visually appeals to the eye.
Right.
Like in pole vault, yes, when you just follow them all the way, so it makes it look like so high and everything.
Right.
But for high jump, it's like I want to be able to see what my legs are doing, where my shoulder positioning, my leg positioning, my whole approach, everything. I don't want to see this area and then just me going over the bar.
Right. Well, my thought, this is my dream bucket list position, or my if I win the lottery position, would be I would build a training center finally, and I would have cameras that are almost straight down the bar, like making both standards look like one, and you can't even see the bar. I'm not crazy about that angle, so I usually take one step right.
Barely.
Or if I'm on the other side, I come one step to the left. So I'm going to call that the 3 to 5 degree angle, right down the bar, so I can see what your knee drive is doing. I can see how far you're leaning to the left or the right. And then if I want to see how far you're leaning back, another angle that I like is a 90 degree angle, straight back. So either right in the middle of the bar so I can look at either side, or two separate cameras again that are at the old zero where Gail Olson was running his approach from, like right at the standard. Because then when you come by me this way, I can see if you're leaning this way or this way, right? And if you're in a straight line, I'm always preaching to my athletes. I'm like, hey, line up your upper body with your leg. It's very, very important. If you're leaning forward and your leg is out in front of you, trying to tell you to go this way, and your upper body's going through, you're not going to be as effective. Line everything up, right? So that's great for me, that angle. And then the fun one is going to be to either get a drone that goes up on top and either stays right on top of you and follows you on your curve, or is just hovering over the bar, one or the other, because that way you can see the curve itself from up on top. Like, it's hard to see sometimes as far as, everybody's got different ideas of what a great curve is, right? And that, how wide the curve should be, and, where do you take off? Like, I've been noticing that my standard has been arm's length away from the bar and just past the standard. And the story behind that, if you've never heard this story before on Raise the Bar, we're talking again with Brayden Sorensen. I'm your host, Troy Haines. We're in the middle of our podcast, and we're talking about where to take off from the bar. So I was taught by Elias, my little, Romanian guru, to get at least arm's length away at opening height and then steadily get farther out as the bar goes up. And this is back in 1986, and it has not changed. It's because I've seen Barshim, where Barshim takes off from is ridiculous. So you're like, okay, get out here. But I always tell my guys to get past the standard, like even if it's just a foot, because my freshman year at UCLA, I jumped 210 in high school, but I never opened any higher than 6'4". So the first meet, I'm feeling good. We've been training, we've been running around. I got Dylan Lee working with me, and I don't even remember who the meet was against. It might have been a 4-way meet, but I opened at 2 meters. So I opened at 6'6 3/4. And first jump, I run up and boom, and I sailed way over. I'm like stoked. First home meet at UCLA, I'm wearing my colors, and I make 6'6 3/4 opening, and the bar goes up to 205. So it's 6'8 3/4, right? What I didn't know, which I found on the film later, was that I was very close to the plane of the bar and a slight bit behind the standard. And on the first jump, I literally jumped over the standard and didn't hit anything. It was a great jump. It was one of my best jumps my freshman year.
2 meters?
At 2 meters, I jumped over the standards and didn't touch anything. So I didn't know that I was too close and a little bit behind. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't been taught by Elias yet. So when it went up to 6'8", I didn't move back, and I got more aggressive because it was 5 centimeters higher. I always tell my jumpers, I'm like, you naturally going to pick up speed as the bar gets higher. Everybody kind of does it, even if they're not taught, right? You're like, okay, I got to get this a little bit more. So of course I got a little bit faster, a little bit tighter, and I'm still way too close and behind, and bang, I hit my head on the top of the standard and just, knocked the standard over. I'm laying in the pit with a gash in my head. It wasn't like gushing blood or anything, but it was a stunner. And I'm laying in the pit, just going, oh my God, what just happened? So needless to say, I did not make 205 after that. And I was just like, lesson learned. Okay, where are we taking off from exactly? I have no idea how I was that far behind. I never hit the standard in high school. I had jumped out of the pit because of either being too flat, or I remember my approach was 20 feet wide in high school. I had a really wide approach. I was 20 by 60. Yeah, that's what Dylan Lee both said to me. They went, wow, dude, what are you doing out there? And I'm like, what? What are you talking to me for, man? I made 210 in high school, And they're like, yeah, we open at that. Crack it down, come down in here a little bit tighter. And it was hard for me because I wasn't good at running curves anyway. I think that might have been why I was out at 20. But yeah, so that happened one time in high school. My run was at 20, and wherever they had the high jump pit, it was like they had those little flags, marking off the area. Mm-hmm. They literally had some flags that were about 15 feet. And I'm measuring my approach. I'm like, hey, this doesn't work. And the guy's like, no, man, we're not moving it. We're not moving the bar. We're not moving anything.
They wouldn't let you move it at all?
No.
Not even the flags on How wide
No,
you were out?
they wouldn't let me do it. So I was like, okay. So I was running right down the flags, and I think it was at 15. So my curve was getting to the middle of the bar now.
Mhm.
So I went, and as you get more aggressive, again, no good. And your brain, and I believe your brain's like this unbelievable supercomputer that analyzes forces and angles really quickly. So as I'm getting more aggressive and the bar's going up, then I'm getting too close. And so what would I do? You just go down the bar a little more. You
Yep.
shave the corner a little bit, right? And get farther down the bar. So this Tustin Relays was a terrible place back in the day. It's now really nice, but at the time it was asphalt. And so like I'm taking off from close to the middle, and I was already going down the bar because I was, crunched over, and I flew right out of the end of the pit. I think I hit the back left corner, and just wham right on the ground. This just like getting hit from behind in football. It was like taking one right in the ribs when you're trying to catch a pass. I was like, I remember laying there just going, okay, so taking off from the middle of the bar is out. I was like, forget
Really say
that.
I've done it before.
Right.
I have the same. I mean, I'm not 20 out, but I have the same problem of I need to scoot back a foot and I need to commit to getting my foot down to where I'm, the arm's length from the standard away.
Yep.
One of my bad habits that I've always had, didn't matter if it was the right side or the left side, if my brain 4 or 5 steps out starts thinking about all the angles and everything or the measure or just all
Yeah.
the numbers, for some reason my brain just wants to tell me all the time that I'm going to be too far away when I really
Right.
just need to commit to taking off on that spot and putting my foot down.
Yeah.
I like, for some reason, I've always had a habit of reaching, and I always reach right into the middle of the pit,
Yep.
and you just sail right into that back corner. And
Yeah.
sometimes I'd land on the pit, sometimes I'd miss.
Yeah.
I think I've never fully missed the mat, but there's been a couple times where I'm so far off the edge of it that by the time I roll over, my head's like scraping the ground or my
Right.
shoulders are just
Yeah.
barely hitting the ground.
Absolutely. So a question I have for you, Brayden, I just had this conversation with the great Dwight Stones, which was interesting because geez, I've had this business now, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps, for 7 years. This is my 7th year. So I've jumped against Dwight back in the day, and not a real contest. He's obviously way better, and have been coaching against him now for a long time. And for a while during the pandemic, we were actually training at the same place, which is a shout out to El Toro High School in Irvine or Tustin. And
I know El Toro.
nice place. Yeah. And they had 2 pits out. So Dwight would use one and I'd use the other if we both showed up on the same day. But we never really have talked technique or anything, and why would we? He's super busy guy. He still calls a lot of track and field, not as much as he was there for a while. And we talked earlier this season, and I don't think he's doing the NBC and the Olympics from what he said. There's some other group that he's talking about trying to work with, but anyway, he actually commented on one of my posts, and we were talking about the knee drive angle. I like to see that knee come up and what I call cover the hip or cross the hip, where, if you're looking at my left leg, my right leg knee drive comes up and just cuts it off the view. Like you can't even see what my left leg is doing because my knee's so far across. And anybody's out there, if you're wondering about this, I believe all the great jumpers do it, no matter what kind of arm technique they're using and anything else. If you're a flopper, that knee needs to come up and across. And I've seen, almost everybody that I can think of that's a great jumper having that same knee drive. There's a great video out there. If you've seen the Japanese guy throwing the stick at the ground and it hits and it starts to spin over, no bend in the stick, right? It just spins around the bar. And then they superimpose on that Stefan Holm from Sweden, who's 5'11" and jumps 7'11", right? He comes around and they show his body lean at the same angle as the stick, and he hits and he goes up. If you're not paying attention and you're really paying attention to the angle, you won't notice that when he comes up and hits that knee drive, his knee goes so far across his hip that it literally looks like it's going at a 90-degree angle to the plane of the bar. And it's fast, like, because when he comes through, his cycling is so fantastic he's just got that knees up and feet to the butt, like this.
Yep.
And it goes right off the ground, like whoop, and it's like the last one when his foot hits the ground, his right leg, because he's a left legger, right? So when his left foot hits the ground, the right is coming up and it disappears behind him. You don't even see it. He looks like he's got a half a leg. His foot has already kicked him in the butt. And then the very next frame in slow motion, it goes wham, and the knee's up and across like that. And then all he does is leave his knee up and just sail straight up and then, do what he does. And you're like, wow, so I've identified that. I don't care what anybody ever tells me. I'm always like, that knee up and across, and the lower, what I call the lower shank, you're taking off on your left or your right? I'm still confused.
I take off my right.
You take off of your right. So your left is your drive knee. So if I'm looking at you from the other side of the bar, I would put a clock around you and say, okay, your leg should be down here. If it's the hands on a clock, and be like 6 o'clock, right? So your 6 o'clock leg is here, and your drive knee, driving back out across. If it was at 3 o'clock, I would say that was probably the greatest angle possible, but anatomically almost impossible because you have to rotate your hip up and out and try to drive the knee across, right? So that's probably not going to do that. But, and again, we're looking at the shank angle here, right? So if you see that knee drive coming up and across, I'm like, well, 3 is really hard. But when I see people that have the drive leg going straight up the other leg, then it doesn't come across. It just goes up. And those are the guys that, they may have tremendous leaps, but they tend to go into the bar. I think that driving the knee back into the curve will slow that swing down and allow you to go up more before you go over. Whereas, if it doesn't, it doesn't. So that's one thing that I'm like, for me, when I'm looking at guys in their takeoff legs, I'm like, hey, sometimes the lower shank angle is pretty good. They're driving the leg on the right angle, but it's barely up. I'm like, dude, we got to get it at least as high as your hip.
Yeah.
At least. I mean, I just posted someone the other day that sent me, no, I don't think I posted it. I think I just saw it. It was Kennedy Souter. He showed one of his jumps, and his knee drive is amazing. It's like way up.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And he just rode it over. Like
it's almost like
a little bit.
It's almost like Shelby's.
Mm-hmm.
Like it isn't as far out and up almost, but he holds it above. I mean, he probably holds his knee drive 4 or 5 inches above every bar.
Right.
And so I drop mine probably. I try to, by the time I'm at like my apex, I am trying to at least hold my drive knee to almost the bar.
Yeah.
But then I'll flop everything out.
Your layout position, by the way, is fantastic. Okay. If you haven't watched this young man jump yet and you're listening, look him up on Instagram. And there's so many topics here we're bringing up in a row here, but they're the things that interest me the most, because I can watch jump videos all day long. It could be a 10-year-old kid from India, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and I have. So, but when I see, really good technique and everything, what you're talking about is something that I term knee drive, right? My sequence is straight, curve, takeoff, flight, layout, and in that order. So I got to run straight, I got to drop into a curve, I got to do takeoff. Takeoff is arm drive, knee drive. I finish the arm drive and knee drive, hopefully at the same time, boom. And then now I think you should do what you're talking about. Leave your knee alone and leave it up, because to me, it's a tremendous change in your center of mass. If I drive that knee up and I leave it up, I have already raised my center of mass right before I left the ground. It's up significantly because your lower leg, especially your quad, is huge. For most people, your legs are like, I think if you cut somebody in half at the hips, the lower half is going to be heavier than the upper half. Your upper body and torso, even with big musculature, the legs are going to be huge. So it's a tremendous amount of mass. You bring it up fast, and it doesn't make sense to me to be going up and then drop that leg, because I'm already starting to lower my center of mass even as I'm in the air. So I'm like, leave it up, like you're saying. So I tell my guys and girls, women and men, leave your knee drive alone to where you're within an inch or two of the bar either way. If you're an inch or two below, I think you can get away with it because of the layout. And if you're an inch or two above, you're fine. there's some people that don't do anything. I remember watching Zhu Qinhua from China jump 7'9", and he never popped his hips. He just drove his knee up and would lean back and sail over. So you're like, you can jump 7'9" and just riding out your knee drive. How important is the hip pop, But if you do wait, like you said, you ride it up there. And then I like watching Barshim. He's my favorite. I don't know about you, but when he gets to where I swear it looks to me that he's doing it on visual cues. Now, I know there are people that just throw their head back because I have to train people out of that all the time. I got people that have their head going back and they're not even off the ground yet. And it drives me insane.
That is the hardest thing, I think, to get someone to not do. And the most important part of high jump is to not do that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I got a counter program all the time. I'm like, okay, well, let's just jump up and touch the crossbar. Let's jump up and touch the rim. Let's go in the back and try to touch the backboard. Like, just keep going up and don't crank your head back. Just, I'm trying to say, hey, the faster you go, you're going to swing up this way anyway, and your head is going to want to go that way. All you got to do is just kind of let that happen. But we still want to, keep your integrity. So anyway, if you ride that knee up to there, you watch him. To me, it looks like he is looking to where he can see down the bar. And as soon as he knows he can see down the bar, then he knows his head is pretty close to being past the bar, right? If I can see down the bar, my head is just about past it now. And by that time, I should be close to horizontal. My personal belief is if you could wait till you're a few degrees from horizontal or perfectly horizontal, now, there's a reason for a little bit less. And my belief there is that there's a time lag in between, especially on a visual like that. If I'm literally waiting for me to see spatially where I am before I begin my layout, and with Barshim, it's a huge move, right? He's waiting. And then you see his head does not go towards the bar plane. It goes down because his head's already past the bar and he's already rode to where he's almost horizontal. So at that point, when you throw your head down and you pop your hips up, you very quickly get to that position that I've seen you in, where your head and your feet are on the same level, horizontal to the ground. And that's when you're saying that people that throw their heads back, they may have an outrageous position. I've seen people in what I call the high C position, right? They're still going vertical and they've already let their head go back and they might have even tried to pop their hip a little bit. So they're like this. And I go, you know what? This is a beautiful position, but I don't care how early you start it. The earlier you start it does not give you better rotation. It's counterproductive. You get worse rotation. And I'm not entirely sure the physics of it. For me, I'm like, well, again, I'm forcing some of the bar. I mean, your center mass is still going to move up. But when I start to not spin or try to spin too early, it seems to me I'm pushing some of my body lower as I punch that hip and behind and below the bar. And now it's got to rotate all the way around. So it's like, just wait. Your body's going to go up. Everybody goes here. They go here and they go here eventually. If you can wait till you're here and then engage the layout, now you're styling, because how many times you heard this? Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it a ton. And it might be just from the younger jumpers, or if you had a chance to work with some high school kids or whatever, they say, if I could have just held my layout longer, if I could just hold it longer and longer. I'm like, okay, let's play that game. Okay, what if you jump, say 7'3", right? And you go up there and you ride your knee, but you only rode it to like 6'10". But then you just had like the perfect timing. Like you threw your head back, punched your hips up, and you held it like crazy. And you milk it and you wait and you get your hips clear and you pull as hard as you can, because when you did it wrong, you start early, you got to pull your legs over instead of just letting them spin, right? Because when you got the spin right, it's almost effortless. You don't have to do anything. But when you started too early, you really got to wait, because you got to get all the way around to that same position. And then you got to pull because you're starting to stall. So again, I'm like, hey, you made it. Say you make it and you skim it and it's going like this, right? My question always is, now what? When the bar goes up to the next height, how are you going to milk any more out of that layout? You can't. You just did the most outrageously too early, really hyper flexible, amazing job of getting everything you could out of it. But when the bar goes up, what is the answer to get you over that bar? And I always tell the kids, I go, your layout is out. You just maxed it out. You're at a 10.5 out of 10. So what are we going to do now? And I said, well, you're going to have to run faster. You're going to have to be taller. You're going to have to get more lean, and you're going to have to drive the heck out of that knee. And now you're going to have to wait for that knee to get you up to 7 or whatever you got to do before you throw your head back, because you can't milk anymore. I mean, some of these guys, you're a perfect example. I'm looking at your layout. I'm just like, I was never that flexible. Okay. For anybody listening, I was not Mr. Flexible. I was just a white dude with power. So when I was squatting 400 and doing full, or hang cleans at 285, I was powerful. So I would just come up, and I learned. Elias was a knee drive guy. I learned how to cycle, and I learned how to drive my knee up and across, and I learned how to wait. And then I would punch my hip a little bit. I was okay at that. I wasn't super flexible, but I knew how to get, out of the chair, as I would call it. But yeah, that whole thing, and I don't think I had anything like Barshim, obviously, but I watched that whole sequence. Like, if you can do it, and this would be great if we had a way to measure, and I'm starting to see some really good equipment on these. I use a V1 golf analyzer when I look at you guys, and I draw lines on things and put angles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's new ones now that have timers on them, so you can see
Okay.
how long it takes to do things. So I'm like, okay, first of all, I want to know what's happening to that ground contact force. Like, how long are we on the ground before we go up? And then I want to know how long flight is, because obviously as the bar goes higher and higher, flight has to get longer. Flight's the only phase that I can think of in those 5 that I gave you that should be getting longer as I learn how to jump higher, right? Now, you may have to just learn how to do things in the right sequence. Some people might have the same flight every single time. If they're really strong, they might be able to leave the ground and have that same amount of arc time, whatever that is. They might miss a lot because they don't know how to get everything in the right place, right? But my contention.
Can you hear my dog barking?
I haven't yet.
My dog barking?
I've been yapping, so I might be droning him out.
I don't know. Is it okay if I take like 2 minutes?
No, absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
Won't shut up. I'll be right back.
And not for the first time, but the first time on somebody else's end, we have an interruption in the Raise the Bar podcast when somebody else has their dog doing something. It's usually my dog or something happening in my background. So this is a first. We are, again, here on Raise the Bar. We're talking with Brayden Sorensen. If you are just tuning in the middle, which doesn't make sense, this isn't, it's not like a radio program, right? Usually you come at the beginning, you just keep listening, but he is a 4-time All-American at Division II. He's a 3-time conference champ. He's a school Nebraska-Kearney indoor and outdoor record holder. And we're talking technique and, Olympic trials and all the good fun stuff. So stay with us here. We're waiting to hear the mystery of the dog.
Okay.
How'd it turn out?
I don't know. He's just out there just barking at nothing. And I'm like, that's random.
Right. Well, I was just telling everybody that usually it's my end that we get the interruptions on, or something happens, or one of my,
I don't know. You'd been barking for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I'm starting to get to the point where I can't even focus on what's going on anymore.
Right. I hear that. But anyway, to finish up our discussion quickly, because I'm sure some people are already yawning. My belief is if I can get my flight down, and if whatever your cue is. Now, some people I know, and I always tell my kids this, I go, I like to teach the visual cues, but there are people that just throw their head back and they're not looking at anything. So I'm like, I get it. And I said, I've seen both methods work. So I'm not going to tell you that this is my method. This is the Haines method, and this is the only way to do it. That's crazy. There's too many examples of different things. So it's like, okay, if you're going to do the visual thing, wait till you can see down the bar. And this is my contention there, because by the time I make the decision to throw my head back, there's a time lag. We both know there's reaction time. There's time for your brain to send the signal. That's why some people have just wired the motion. And when their head goes back right away, they can get away with that for a long time until they get to a height that's just too early for. And then they've got to learn how to wait longer. So that would be where you could conceivably, if you were quick enough or you had a good sense of timing, you could say now, and then they could do it. Or, whatever, where you're saying, okay, we've got to just wait longer. And you say, how long? And I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about hundreds of seconds. Even a tenth of a second is a long time, in the high jump for flight time. So you figure in a tenth of a second, if that knee is up and it's going up, what is a tenth of a second in inches, traveled? And it's got to be not insignificant, right? So, but my idea is, again, once I've gone all the way up and I've peaked out and I'm starting to arc over, if I can wait to the same point every time, then my layout time should be the same every time. If I think of it that way, you know what I mean? Positionally, and to the benefit of everybody, especially someone with a great layout like yourself, you don't have to hold it so long.
It's just real quick.
Yeah, if you can wait, just all you got to do is get that head to get those hips up at the right second. I teach, I call it the slinky position, right? So if you're holding a slinky in your hands, as soon as the head gets lower than the feet, you're done. You're done. You just spin and you're done. I'm also interested, tell me your opinion on this. If you could throw your head back, and again, seeing your position, I gotta get some stuff preloaded into these so I can put them on the podcast so people can actually see them. That's a new idea, note to self. Because I can share screen, right? I should share screen and show your position. When you're in that position, do you think, knowing yourself, first of all, if you rotate well, you land way up on your shoulders, right? And your feet go flying over your head. You look like you're still listening to your dog.
Yeah, he just keeps barking. I've never seen him do this before.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to go get him real quick and just bring him in here.
There you go. There you go. Let's bring him in.
Oh. God, it's like he had seen a ghost or something in the kitchen. He's just in a corner barking at nothing.
Right. Well, you never know. I'm a believer in by the way, if anybody ever asked and said, do you believe in ghosts? I would say yes. Without any evidence, but.
Okay. My apologies.
No, not at all. I forget where we were in the discussion. It was right at the end. The part about
about rotation.
Position. Yeah, rotation. So here was my question. And this is something I'm dying to try. Because I want to get another part of my dream scenario, if I win the lottery, is to get acrobat ropes, where they do backward flips and stuff like that. And you can have both sides pull the rope if you're in a bad position, and they just suspend you off the ground so you don't get hurt, right? If you're in the middle of a spin or something. And I think I've seen those in use both with that and also have you ever seen the competitive trampolinists in the Olympics? Yes. The ones where the guys jump up and they do like 20 spins and they come down and there's a little target on the thing that they're trying to hit, which is amazing. One of my favorite things to watch. So they show those guys, right? But I think when they're training, they have the ropes on them sometimes because if you miss, right? If you're slightly off balance when you hit, you can get shot one way or the other, right?
Oh, so
yeah. And you can't have those ropes in the competition, but during training, it's not a bad idea, right? So my contention is, and someone who's like you, where you said, if you rotate well, you're going to land high up on your neck. The question is why? And my idea is, if I pull my legs, you see people a lot of times are in that position, and what do? They pull, right? You pull forward to bring your knees to your chest, and you start to spin because you get smaller, right? But my other thought is, if I'm in a really good position, what if I just stay in that position? If I waited to the Barshim horizontal and I pop down, why not just spin all the way around and land on my belly? You know what I mean?
I've always wondered that too. It'd be like, okay, so growing up, all I did was flips, parkour stuff, diving, gymnastics, lots and lots of hours. So when I first started high jumping, I'm like, oh, just go do a backflip because I do them all the time. Like just jump up, throw my head back, and just hold it. Just let it just all the way.
Yep.
But then I was like, at that point, I would throw my head back so fast that I couldn't initially get my hips up to let anything actually rotate. But then once I realized that if I just hold my knee drive up long enough to the point where when I throw my head back, my hips don't actually drop and my knees don't drop back down.
Right.
Then if I just hold it I basically tell myself when I go to jump, I just got to hold my knee up And if I just hold my layout position till I hit the mat, those are
Yes.
my jumps.
Yep.
I've always told people trying to learn how to high jump, it's like the approach does everything for you. All you got to do is go in there and take off. And you should not have to tell your body or your brain to throw your head back. And you should not have to tell yourself that you have to pitch. It
Yes.
should just happen.
Yep. Agreed. That's
Just
a
do
hard
it.
one. Yeah. I've got a kid right now. I teach one of my days of the week. I actually do 5 days of the week with 5 different schools, if you can believe that. So I got St. Paul High School on Monday. I've got Vanguard University on Tuesdays. I've got Redondo, I go on Wednesdays. I've got Orange Lutheran, who trains at Cal State Fullerton or Fullerton Junior College. And then on Fridays, I'm at St. John Bosco. So it's like every day of the week, there's somewhere different. You got different kids, different skill levels, Well, Oliver was one of my kids that I recruited from Redondo. He was a, basketball player this year. He's a freshman, just tall and skinny and fast, and he is having trouble because he's the exact opposite. He's not the early head throwback guy. He's the guy that, jumps up in the air, turns and looks at his belly, right? Or looks at his feet. So he's not kind of letting that whole thing go back. And
As the little like,
yeah, exactly. And he looks like sometimes like he's even scared. Like sometimes you can see people that look like they're bracing as they're falling backwards. You know what I'm saying? And I'm
well,
like,
we have a freshman that just came in, and it's so weird because he will jump up in the air and like throw his head back all weird, but he won't let himself land on his shoulders. Like he
yeah,
has to like he goes up in the air and then he has to put his hands here to land.
right.
So it's like 3/4 of the way through the jump. It's like he gets scared and just bails almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Just puts his hands down.
That's what I keep
Is
telling
the
everybody.
kid jumped like 6'10" doing it. And I'm like, what
Wow.
happens when you actually
Right. Well, there's
don't have to
two to
brace
that.
to land in the pit?
Yeah, getting in a good position is half the battle. And the other one is don't reach back. I keep telling them, I go, if you reach behind you and you pin your arms by accident, you're going to break one of your arms, or separate your shoulder or something, because it's unnatural.
And I had to figure that out. I had to figure that out too. I mean, when I was jumping, like the first time I ever jumped off a springboard or off of like a ramp or like hill thing, you put it up to 7'6", 7'8" to 8 foot for the first times in like high school or when you're a freshman. That fall is a lot.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. A lot of,
difference in timing is
yes.
so
Yeah. It's
like, I
different.
mean, I think the first time when I was a junior or senior in high school and I jumped probably at like 7'6" or something using like a hill or a ramp, just the fall, it was like I didn't know how to actually land in the pit.
Right. Yeah.
But then, I mean, as time went on, it got more and more comfortable. But
Right.
no, I feel like there's a lot of people that just are too scared to almost, especially new high jumpers coming in. They need to almost, with the bar being that low, you have to almost throw your head back and hold it till you almost hit the pit if you have to lay out to make those bars. And
Right.
they're way too scared.
And you don't want to hold your head back that long because you can just break your neck. You stick your head into that, mat. Yeah. I tell them that too. I'm like when we do the fallbacks, the standing on your feet, right? And you fall back and you pop your hips up. I'm like, don't throw your head back. You'll just break your neck, because you're going straight down like a javelin. So it's like
to the side.
Only drill where I have them keep their chin on their chest. I said, if you want to cheat, turn your head to the side, but still keep it here, because it's too many things. God, there was something that you said. I was like, don't forget to ask this question. And then I think I forgot. But it's fun because we're talking about a lot of things. What was it? I can't remember. But
You said something about, I was gonna say when we were talking about Mutaz and his like visual cue of when he's like on the like looking down the path of the bar.
right.
Oh, my whole jump, my whole career has just been all awareness. It's all spatial awareness. So I come off the ground and I don't care. Like it doesn't matter if you have it at 6'4" or 7'4". My shoulder's gonna get above it.
Right.
The thing is, if I don't hold my shoulder up until I get to about here-ish on the bar,
Yeah.
I'm pretty much done. Because
Yeah.
I got to get this much above the bar before I throw my head back. And the thing
Right.
that I feel like I do differently than a lot of people is a lot of people like to just throw their head to the side and just get to here and just hold
Right.
this. For some reason, I've never been the guy that's been able to do that. And I kind of like Mutaz just, I wouldn't say like Mutaz, but I throw my head almost straight down.
Yeah.
But the only way that that's going to work is if I initially hold my knee drive up long enough
To get horizontal.
where when I throw my head down, the rest isn't going to drop.
Right. So what we're talking about there, and this is kind of interesting to me because when you come off the ground, right, you're here. Let's just represent this as a stick, one way or the other. So I'm coming from the left. I would be leaning this way. Okay. If I hit down here, I should swing up and then eventually go over. And if you watch every single, I will break down film sometimes for people, and I'll draw lines through the long bones. So forearm, upper arm, right, lower leg, upper leg. Treat your torso as one of those. So any of those segments that I'll call them, a segment analysis, for me should be, again, your whole body is basically represented as that stick that the guy was throwing at the ground in the demonstration. So if you watch, every one of the body parts that you have is, if they're leaning at that angle, as you start to do your block, you're starting to drive your knee up or whatever, the whole body starts to swing anyway. So my idea is the farther we're leaning away, the better chance I have of hitting vertical. If I'm blowing through vertical, there's only a couple ways to fix that. I either A, move you farther away again, or B, we got to figure out how for you not to blow through that fast, which for me means knee across more and more and more. And hopefully arms also doing the same thing. Like when I see people with their hands in a little box around their heads, I'm not crazy about that. Like I see a lot of real short arms. When I see short arms, then they get back into a nice position quickly. But I'm like, are you really getting much out of your arms? Because there are some guys that get the arms way up here, and what you were talking about, this arm starts to go, away from you. So my contention is always in that position. Like this doesn't get away from you. You actually have pulled it back, right? And gotten into a position. So I tell people,
I go up is I hold it up. And then as soon as I go to throw my head back, my arm comes down to like here. It never just.
Right. I'd like to get your hands all the way back to your hips, because my contention is if your body gets long, right? And this is getting back to the first part of the argument. So if say I come through and I hit and I go straight up, arms drive up, knee drives up, everything's up. My toe is just leaving the ground, toe off, right? That is the end of takeoff. And we have now entered flight. Okay. I have left the ground. I am now flying straight up. Ideally, if I've hit zero, there's only a few people that I jumped against used to drive me crazy. Lee Balkin, if you're listening, God bless you. He used to hit zero every time and just drive you nuts because he would go straight up. I watched him on film one time, and you know how you take those jumps where you're like, you didn't jump enough to make it. Like you can see it in his face. So he's running up, he comes up, he goes boom. And like every other time I ever saw him jump, straight up. And you can see it on his face. He's like going up. He's like, I really didn't hit that very well. And all of a sudden you see his eyes. He's like, hey, I'm still going up. And then he was like you, super flexible. So all of a sudden he just goes, well, hey, boom. And then he hits his layout and he's way over this bar. And I remember watching this going, oh, people that hit vertical just drive me nuts. Cause I was like, Lee was 6'4", like 160 maybe. I was 6'3", 195, so if I was not hitting vertical, I'm going across. So that was one of my solutions, was to get farther out for sure. Like nothing like Jumpman Westner, but if you've watched Jumpman, dunking from behind the free throw line, right?
Crazy.
He jumped 7'5" 3/4. I haven't seen anything out of him this year. I'm wondering if he gave it up, if he's just going commercial.
I think I saw something about him last week.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know he's training.
Good.
Still.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him jump out of meet yet, but I think he is.
He says he feels better heavier. He feels better at like 2
Yeah. See, that was the weird thing.
Right?
I heard that and I was like, that is just crazy. Because I'm 165-ish and I'm 6'4".
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just went down to 165 from like 175 mid. And I think it's helped me a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to we've been changing a lot of stuff recently to try to get
Right.
the most out of everything I can.
Sure.
But I don't know. I
Strength-
think being lighter helps me a lot.
Well, it's strength
But
to weight ratio, right? I mean,
yep.
if you're exerting the same amount of force and you have 10 pounds less to carry, I tell my kids that too, and anybody, any of my athletes, I should stop saying kids. I deal a lot with high school and younger, but I do have, I guess maybe my 70-year-olds would be happy to hear me call them kids. So, I tell everybody that, why did God make birds with hollow bones? It's like, you're lighter, dude. That's what gets you in the
Yeah.
air. When you step on a bird and you hear that crunching sound, it's like they break so easily, like a
Oh
sparrow,
yeah.
something like that. It's just their bones are hollow. That's by design. It makes sense. So, and unfortunately, I know there's been coaches out there and sometimes athletes may not hear the same message from a coach. If the coach is saying, hey, we need to, you're fat, you need to lose weight, you can't get off the ground. That's not the way we want to go there. But at the same time, strength to weight ratio is a real deal, and why do we recruit tall, thin, fast? I'll do that to the kids sometimes. I go, hey, let's go down the magic checklist. Okay, you're 6'4", good. You're tall, you're thin, you're fast, you're flexible. I'm like, I hate you. You're perfect. Like,
Yeah.
I love you because this is what we're going to do with your training. You've got every attribute that we need. If you've got any pop at all, we're going to be great. And then there's other times I'm like, okay, you're 5'2". What do you not have? I go, you're fast, you're light, you're flexible, you're not real tall. So what are we going to do? I train them. I'm like, get your knees up when you're running. Get your feet kicking you in the butt as best as you can, man. Get as tall as you can. Get your arms swinging way up here. Pick up your center of mass, so when you come through, we can use the speed and the light part. That's great, but you're fighting it at a disadvantage, compared to all these other guys. Now, if you have Spud Webb hops at 5'6" and you're fast and light, we're still gonna be able to jump some pretty amazing heights.
Yeah, we had when I was just coming in, we had a senior and he was the school record holder at UNK before me. He was 5'8" and he jumped 15, I think. And then he's had some good looks at anywhere from 16 to 20.
Yeah.
But no, it was weird because I feel like if you're tall and skinny, you can stay pretty consistent just because my center of gravity is way higher, all that stuff. But for him, one day he'd show up and he'd be a 6'2" guy. The next day he'd show up and be a 7'2" guy. And it's just
Yeah.
everything you just said. I mean, if his legs were not cycling and coming through and he wasn't tall, he was a 6'4" guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as soon as he cycled his legs really, really well, it was just
Yeah. That's another point of contention with me too. Like we're talking about joint angles and all this other stuff, but Elias was big on cycling. So I learned a lot about cycling. And, the funny thing is not everybody cycles and jumps
yeah.
high.
And that's the thing I feel like this year and in the past I've had the most struggle with. It's like it'll be there and then all of a sudden like it'll leave and it'll be there. But I really noticed and I thought I know everyone's different, but I thought for a while, like when I was a freshman and I jumped 7 foot for the first time a few times, I thought the biggest difference between my jumps was just the cycling. If I was cycling my legs from, I mean, almost the first step out of the pushing out the back phase,
Yep.
those last 7 steps, if you don't cycle, then you just can't run through the spot almost.
Yep. Yep.
It's like you go to a spot and you just jump and it's not ever very good.
Yeah.
But
Well,
if you run through that spot continuously cycling, it just huge difference.
sure. Oh yeah. I agree with you 100%. And here's the other thing. If your cycling is decreasing, there's a really good chance that your center mass is dropping.
Yep.
It's not a good chance. It's gonna drop.
Oh yeah.
If your feet are no longer kicking you in the butt every step and your knees not coming as high as your hip, then your leg is lower and your center mass is lower. Now, if that happens, my stride length will definitely drop. So I've got a decrease in my center of mass. I've got a decrease in my stride length. So unless I go hyper quick with short, choppy steps, I will also suffer a drop in speed. the very best I think I can do when I go slower, when I go lower cycling, right? Lower cycling, therefore shorter stride length. I can get what I call a pseudo acceleration. I have one jumper, Kevin Schmidt, who's out here in high school, jumped 6'9" for me. He's at Cal Poly St. Louis Obispo right now. And we have the same ongoing thing. I'm like, dude, got to pick up your feet, pick up your knees when you go, because he's real quick, but he's only 5'10". So his stride length isn't long anyway. And when he goes to accelerate, he just gets kind of what I call skittery, like fast feet, but not necessarily with the cycling. So, and he was a foot scraper in high school a little bit. So I'm like, hey, we got to get rid of that foot scrape. We got to get you to cycle. So, and the only problem with all of this, Brayden, is that I used to say a few years back, I don't think I'm ever going to see somebody scrape their feet and jump higher than say 7'4". And I was at the Mount Sac meet, and one of the guys from Texas Tech who had just graduated, there's a guy named Seals from USC was there. He jumped 7'6.5" that day when I was watching. He's amazing. And then
Ernie?
Yeah, Ernie.
Yep.
Great cycling, what you were just mentioning.
Oh yeah, doesn't he scrape the ground?
No, the kid from Texas Tech was the scraper. I didn't see Ernie do it because his trail foot would literally kick him in the butt before the knee came up. Yeah. So he was not a scraper, but the Texas Tech kid was, and he jumped 5.5. So I was like,
that?
I can't remember the guy's name. I apologize if you're listening out there. It was at Mount Sac. It was 2 years ago. I was there because I was training Barbara, the Canadian gal, Barbara Bachoka, and we went a couple days in a row, and I stayed around with my old coach, who was also Doug Nordquist's coach, and we were watching. And when I was listening to Doug Nordquist and Alan Hankel, they would literally jump by jump just do the cycling, and they would be like, and before the guy would take off, almost they'd be like, "Yep," or "Nope," and they were right every time. As far as
I do that, I try to do that when I watch meets too.
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, it doesn't matter because how our team is designed. My coach is the pole vault high jump multi coach.
Right.
So I watch a lot of pole vault too.
Yeah.
And I'll be watching them run down the runway, and I'll see them drop their knees the last 3 steps and stop cycling, and then they just suck. Yep. And I watch the same thing in high jump.
Yep. So it works long and triple too. I'm here to tell you. And picture a hurdler. What if a hurdler stops cycling? You're a high hurdler.
Also, doesn't it also you lose all your momentum? Your momentum is no longer going forward. It's there.
Yeah. So, I mean, the cycling's huge, right? But the quick end to all that was not only did I see someone jump higher than I thought they ever could, within a month of that, I don't know if you've seen Fabian Delrid, the kid from Sweden, 6'9.5" this kid is, right? Super tall. He jumped 7'7.25". I did a post for him. He gave me all of his videos from when he was like 12 up. It's really fun. So I've got all of them in there with the heights on them. Some of them look kind of professionally done. And then he sent me one great, fantastic lean back angle. When he was younger, he was a single armor, real tall, not just overly fast, but single arm up and no scrape. When he jumped 7'7.75" or whatever it was, he comes through and you can see the dust trail on the scrape. So he's cycling okay, but then he powers through the end. And I've seen his weight workouts, and I know he's really strong. So I'm like, he's just gone power. And so that's 7'7". Now, I had said that, and somebody either sent it to me or I don't know what, but I saw Charles Austin's 7'10.5" jump. He scrapes his foot on the takeoff. At 7'10.5", Olympic
record one?
Olympic record holder for the US who won the gold in '96.
So was the jump you're talking about the Olympic one, or was it a different jump?
It was the Olympic one. So if you watch it, it's a foot.
I'm pretty sure in that video, you can like clear as day hear the or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I mean, you and I are both in the same camp, and at the same time, there are people strong enough to scrape their legs. And my contention always is, but what if they didn't scrape their leg? would they have an even better knee drive and then jump even higher? Which is a scary thought.
So with speaking of just knee drive, have you seen like Shelby's knee drive, how it's not like punched up, it's almost like he swings it out and then up.
Really? Who
And
are we
I've
talking
always
about? Shelby
Shelby McEwen.
McEwen. I have
Yeah.
not, but I need to watch. I've heard about this young
I
man.
I don't know what it was. I thought I saw something the other day. Just it was like a few people that were just talking about his knee drive being like one of
Right.
like the biggest reasons why he jumps so high, and it's because his knee drive doesn't like punch up. It's almost like he swings his foot out, almost
Oh.
like it's a little different, but Romaine Beckford,
Hmm.
the NCAA leader right now,
Yeah.
he also like swings his foot out and then drives his knee. And it's just so like it just doesn't look the
It doesn't look like
same,
everybody else's.
but
So
it works. And
yeah.
I never understood how it
Here's my
works.
contention. Here's my contention. Without even seeing it, I'm going to throw this at you. But again, I think the knee up is important. So us getting our knee to at least hip height is good. If you can get it higher with the same kind of speed, so much the better. You can ride it longer and then pop it at the top. Fine. But what's of even more importance in some ways, although both Sotomayor and um, Austin, both, if you watch them, they're slightly under rotated. They don't
Mhm.
drive that knee all the way across. They drive it up and across a little, but not all the way across, like I'm talking about with the Stephen Holm. Or I've got one picture of Dietmar Mogenberg that was on the internet on where his knee is up and across like nobody's business. And he won the Olympics in '84, jumped 7'8 3/4", right? So, but he was 6'8", and he's a stick, really thin. And that
Mhm.
knee up and across is killer. But my contention is just this, that the faster we approach, right? You're tall and you're fast and you're flying at the bar. You have momentum. Momentum in physics is mass times velocity. So you are moving at a high speed, and therefore your momentum is like a force arrow going towards the pit, which in a lot of ways is creating our own worst enemy, because we don't need to go towards the pit. We need to go up. So I need to counter all of those forces going towards the pit with forces going away from the pit. That's why leaning away is important. And that's why that knee drive going back into the curve, in my estimation, is the number one of all the things. And so if it goes around, but even better into this, I believe it's going to slow this down and allow you to come through and hit vertical better, the better that move is, right? The better the cross angle is. That's why I was talking about the angle of the shank and all that. Like, I think that 90-degree would be great, but nobody's hips work quite like that. The closest I've seen to that, believe it or not, is who's the guy from the Ukraine that took third in the Olympics? He jumped
Oh,
7'9" that year a couple
is it
times. He's not
Pop?
he's not Ukrainian, he's Russian. Oh God, it's right there.
Oh, wait, like recently?
Well, in 2021, he took the bronze. I'm pretty sure. If he didn't take the bronze, he took fourth or fifth. No, because
Because it wouldn't be Russia because they weren't in it.
the Korean guy took it. So
Kor-
maybe he's Ukrainian.
Woo?
Which one?
Wait, oh no, because Woo's the Korean,
Wu's the Korean. He took bronze
and
because
then
the two
third
took gold.
is it Protsenko? Is that his name?
It's something like
Or-
that, maybe. But he actually gets the hip up and jams it up there quick, but then he drops his knee right away, and he still jumps 7'9". It's amazing. He had a jump sequence on Instagram where he opened at like I want to say 215, maybe 220. He goes 220, 225, 229, 233, 236, like boom, 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 all first jumps. And he ended up jumping 7'9". And it was like just before the games. It was like a couple months
Yep.
before.
Yeah,
And
his name it's Andy Protsenko
yeah, something
or
like that.
Andriy.
Yeah, the knee
But
drive,
he's old.
right? I
Like he jumped 40 in like he
well,
jumped 40 in the mix of when Bondarenko and Mutaz and Ukov, all them jumped 40 in like 2014.
yeah. Yeah, there was a great year back there when it was, and they say
Mhm.
Mutaz has jumped it more than anybody else. The 7-11 barrier. Like they said he's had some jumps at 7-11 that were like,
Oh yeah.
huge when he was younger.
He's had some crazy ones.
It'd
And I
be
mean,
interesting to see what happens.
Bondarenko's gave it so many goes and so many
Yeah.
times he's been over.
Yeah. Well, he's gifted, right? He's 6'8" also. He's another 6'8", and
Yeah.
he runs like an antelope. And then Derek drew in there for a while at 6'5". If I don't know if you saw it, but when he's doing his thing, I love watching the 2016 one because he just had the most outrageous meet. I mean, he didn't
Yeah,
miss.
he was on.
He
I
didn't
remember
miss.
watching it and I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way Mutaz is gonna lose. And then all of a sudden just who is this guy?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, I didn't watch like college
Yeah.
track then. I mean, I was 15, 16,
Yeah.
but
Well,
he came out of
watch that.
nowhere.
If you watch that
Just,
meet, he didn't miss until it was over. He
I
literally
think
made
he
every
didn't
height
miss till
first jump.
38.
Yeah, he made everything first jump.
Mhm.
And then when Mutaz missed, because they were on the same heights every time. So when he made whatever his last height was that won, I think Bondarenko passed again. Like Bondarenko opened at 225. He opened at 7'4".
He's the king of passing.
Oh, he passed. And then he skipped over again. He opened later than they both did, and then skipped the next height that they both did, and came in at the next one, and he went make, and then 3 misses. And the 3 misses would it have beaten? I don't know if he would have beaten Druin because he wasn't the last one jumping.
I don't think so because I think
Druin hadn't missed. When I watched it, I actually charted it out one time. I'm like, okay, he didn't miss until he was done. Barshim didn't miss until that last height. But you could tell because Druin was leading off. When Druin went first and made that height, that was the first time I saw Barshim panic. Because Barshim was fine until that one height, that really high height that drew him in. First, you could almost see him. He's like, damn, dude. And then when he went up for the first time ever, he took off and threw his head back right away. Like he was trying to get everything out of his layout all of a sudden.
because he's trying too hard.
Yeah, and I remember watching that. I'm like, dude, I've never seen him do that before. It was the worst jump I'd ever seen him take, and it was like, and he almost fixed it on a couple of the other jumps, but then, Bondarenko, yeah, Bondarenko trips me out because I watch his workouts and I laugh at the stuff he does on Instagram. He's doing little elastic bands, he's leaning against the wall. He's holding a 25-pound plate. He's doing like these little, 2-inch bends with his knees. And I'm just, I did full squats, 400 pounds and, hand cleans at all this heavy weight to jump, 222. And he just runs up and like, I can never tell where he's starting. I don't know if you've ever been able to figure that out. He just starts running. And
Yeah.
like, I haven't figured out how many steps. I don't, because most of those guys, you can see there's a cadence, right? They're going along, and all of a sudden, oh, that's their mark. Cause you can see it. It's like, then you count. The only other guy that doesn't do that is Stark, right? Brandon Stark. He used to have a 16-step approach. Now he's down to 14, but that's a long approach. And like you said, he's crazy.
I love how he jumps.
Yeah.
Stark is like probably one of my, like, in visual appeal of what I like to look at for high jump. Because it's almost, it wouldn't say it's quite like Holmes, but it's one of those where he just holds it and then just layout done.
Yep. Yeah. His cycling is pristine.
It's perfect.
Yeah. It's really, really good. He doesn't go right into layout. Like you said, I mean, you can't, you got to wait for the bar to keep going up. So he doesn't necessarily ride the knee that long. It depends. But sometimes when I see them drop their knee early, it's because it is lower. So I have seen, there's one jump where Barshim just kind of flicks his hands up like this really quick and immediately goes into layout. But I look at the bar sometimes, I think it's only like 6'8". So I'm like, he's just kind of playing around with that, but yeah, I can't wait for this year. I love seeing you guys jump. When's your big meet, the Division II, NC2As and all that? You got to go through regional.
No, we don't have
regionals.
I mean, we'll also, just like indoor for D1, they don't have regionals. It's only outdoors, but outdoors as well, we don't have a regional.
Okay.
We just go top 16 on the set list.
Yeah.
Make it indoors and top 20 outdoors.
Okay.
But
where are those big meets this year? Your indoor and your outdoor. Indoor should be coming up, right?
Yeah. So I think it's either March 9th or 10th.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same time as D3, D1. It's the same day, I'm pretty sure.
Where are you guys going?
It's at Pitt State.
Okay.
But
and then
both of our national meets are at our conference schools.
Yeah.
So both One's at Emporia, which is in our conference, and the other one's at Pitt State, which is in our conference. But which I mean, it's nice because I've been to both those places. I'm very familiar, but at the same time, it's like, why can't I go somewhere fun?
Yeah.
Like they're both in Kansas, and it's
Yeah.
like I've been to Kansas every weekend for 5 years now, and I go to like California or
Right.
somewhere.
Somewhere warm. Yeah. Well, that might be
Yeah.
a disadvantage, right? You get too warm because you know how to deal with the cold.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a few in Michigan, Virginia, Alabama,
Right.
those places. And then I get to my senior year and it's like, yep, let's put both of them in Kansas.
Oh, I know. Amazing. Kansas brings to mind the Kansas State. Have you ever jumped against Marcus Gelpy?
I have not.
He's new this year, I think, to
No,
Kansas.
I know exactly who he is.
Yeah.
I think I watched his podcast that you did with him when he was jumping for the JUCO school he went to,
Yes.
or whatever that was.
I remember. Yeah, I was back in the old days. He was jumped six,
He jumped 16 at was it at Azusa or was it at Mount Sac?
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, no, I haven't jumped against him. I've jumped against most of his teammates though.
Yeah, yeah. And he had a meteoric rise, kind of like yours, right? I remember he was first post I got ahead of him was jumping 6'8" or something. So
I think
he's gone up quite a bit.
I think the same year he jumped what like the 16 or whatever was the same year that I jumped 17, and that's when things started coming together. But
Absolutely.
no, I have not jumped against him, but I know there's a couple. I think I've jumped against everyone else on his team but
Right.
him, except for Shane Carr. I mean, he's not there anymore, but
Right. Well, hey, Brayden, I'm a big fan of you and your work. When I was looking at your layout and speed and attack and all that, I'm just like amazed. And I think you're just starting, like you said, to scrape the surface, of what you can get. So I'm just waiting to hear that you've jumped 7.3 and 7.5 and something like that, and you get to go to the trials. So
I was gonna say we've took a lot of attempts at 21, 22.
yeah,
It's gonna happen. And then
yeah,
I feel like I've been working towards 21 for so long that once 21's over with, the next one's just it's either gonna be that double PR day or
right,
it's gonna be like I'm gonna make 21 once and then it's never gonna be like hard again.
right.
Or we'll hit like one of those double PR days where it's just like, oh, I'll just go throw it at the next one and somehow you make it. But
Yeah.
no,
Well,
there's a lot left, I think.
a lot left there, a lot of meat on that bone, and love to hear about you jumping some awesome heights and getting to go to the trials, which I'm sure is on your list this year, right?
That's the goal.
Awesome. Well, hey, Brayden, thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate you. And I know it's getting late out there and cold.
Yep.
In the
Yep.
evening. So stay healthy, be smart, make sure you get your rest, get to bed early and eat all that protein you got to eat to get strong, but and light and all the things that you're doing. I love you're definitely a student of your craft. You can tell by the way we're talking about stuff. So
I loved it.
anytime, I'm here to promote you. So, when you get some videos of you, I'd love to see training, lifting, running, uphills, downhills, plyos, anything and everything. I'd be happy to promote you and, do an analysis post or anything, and let people know who you are, laboring in obscurity there in in your hometown. And then, the more people know about you, the more we get you on TV, the higher you're jumping, the better off this whole sport can be.
Mhm.
All right, sir. It was a
Awesome. Well,
pleasure.
thank you. I appreciate it. I'll definitely send some stuff your way once I get some.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Indoor and out, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect.
All right, Brayden Sorensen, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We'll see you again soon. All
Yep.
right, have a good
I'd
one,
love
man.
to come back.
All
Thank
right.
you.
That was a fast 2 hours.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Good night.
Night.